Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and I'll be sharing the recording with everyone afterwards. So we actually have a website. If you go to affluence.com/webinars, we typically upload and then paste a webinar there. And then if you go there, you'll also see a lot of other recordings as well. So if you have trouble accessing the recording, please be sure to check. And the other thing I want to mention is there's a chat section inside the webinar here. If you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please share them in the chat. I'd be happy to take a look and respond to them after the webinar, after the presentation and the demo. With that, we'll get started. Today's webinar is on the introduction to Matrix. So we'll be covering the basics of Matrix, in particular, help you understand what the software is, what it can do, and then show you how to become more effective and efficient at prioritizing tasks, projects, and emails, help you envision what your work and life success may look like, and then also leverage the 20% of the features in Matrix that would give you 80% of the benefits. I think that's my number one goal today, which is to show you how to get started real quickly, real easily, and really hone in on the features that I think will drive value. And then lastly, provide you some tips and tricks to help you prioritize better starting today. I think the most important thing in all of this is that when you get out of today's webinar, you can go open up your Matrix, get started, immediately and actually start prioritizing your task. And if you're not able to do that, if you're not getting there, then definitely something is wrong with either the setup or whatever it is, in which case, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to provide any guidance necessary for you to get started. So why do you even prioritize? There's three reasons why customers come to Matrix. The first is to be better at keeping track on the status of work across many areas of responsibilities. The second is to create alignment across team members so that everyone knows what's important. And then thirdly, to take back control of your emails and meetings. I think for all of us here today, one of the challenges we face constantly is how much effort we have to spend to look at all the emails that we get and then how many meetings aren't actually that productive. So my goal is to show you how to use some of our integrations to actually tackle those specific challenges. And then one of the corollary that you might want to ask yourselves, and given that you're here today, you're probably thinking about how do I prioritize my time better? So I want you to think about what happens if you don't prioritize better? What if you keep the status quo? Now, for the vast majority of us, it's probably not that big of a deal, except in a few scenarios. First, you might start losing sight on what's important and you end up working on the wrong things. One of the things that I absolutely hate is if you end up working and spending all your effort on something that takes quite a bit of time and resources, and then realizing at the very end that it didn't matter. So working on the wrong things and doing the wrong things right, I think is the worst use of resources that we can have. And then secondly, you feel busy, but you're not meeting your goals. So I think looking busy or, for lack of better words, pretending to be busy or even actually being busy, but not actually working on critical tasks, I think is a waste of resources for everybody. And I think, unfortunately, from a team management standpoint, if you're the manager and you're seeing your team members being so busy and they're working on all sorts of stuff, yet at the same time, you're not meeting the goals that you have, then clearly the prioritization is off, right? And so that's one of those things where it's a red flag for us to be able to investigate and go further and ensure that everyone's on the same page. And then lastly, if you feel completely overwhelmed by emails and meetings, I mean, this is something that I feel challenged with every single day. I get so many emails on a constant basis. It's just so hard to ensure that you don't drop those most important emails. So again, if you feel like these are the challenges that you would face if you don't improve your processes, then that's exactly what Matrix is intended to help. So what is Matrix? It's a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software that helps at three different levels. At the individual level, which I would say is the most important, It helps you prioritize your most important tasks and emails. That's pretty much it. If you are the only person using Matrix within your team or within your organization, and you're able to actually prioritize your tasks and emails, then I think we've done a good job. What happens though is that as you become better and better at prioritization, you start realizing, wait a minute, I wish my team could be on the same page, right? How do I know everyone's priorities? And therefore, Matrix helps at the team level, so then everyone's aligned on key projects. And then as you use Matrix across the team over longer and longer period, Matrix creates a single source of truth to help everyone be aligned on all critical projects, but spanning across time. So being able to look back at the history of changes, looking back at decisions on why we changed due dates and so forth, or discussions around key tasks, that's when the magic really happens, and Matrix provide value for your entire team. So what makes Matrix better than a lot of the other competing solution? It's the only Microsoft 365 security certified solution across web app, Teams app, and Outlook app. We're deeply integrated into Teams, Outlook, Copilot. In fact, we're probably the most integrated solution in the Microsoft ecosystem. And then thirdly, Matrix helps you focus on prioritization, that being the number one thing that we think we can deliver value on. It's not just about tasks. It's not just about writing down your to-do list. It's not just about emails or meetings or something like that. I think if you use Matrix, just think about it as a way to ensure that you are working on the right things, and then helping communicate that to the rest of your team members. We also provide people-centered collaboration, which means being able to understand what it is that you need to work on for a specific person. And then lastly, Matrix is available as a standard SaaS solution, but also as a HIPAA compliant solution for healthcare and life sciences, as well as an Azure government cloud solution. We also have private Azure deployments that can be deployed anywhere in the world. One of the things I also want to show you today as well is some of our basic AI integrations that is intended to help you specifically be a little bit more productive. And so I'll try to show you how to leverage that on a day-to-day basis. What makes Matrix particularly effective, in my opinion, is it helps you determine what you need to work on now, what you need to work on later, what you need to delegate, and providing one central place for everyone to know what needs to be done. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because customers sometimes, they'll use Matrix for a while, and then they start to forget to use Matrix. And you'll experience this yourself too. It happens with every single piece of software, every single process, every single system, right? You go and you get really excited in the beginning. You're like, okay, I'm going to write down all these things I have to do. But then what happens is that you start forgetting. You go back to your status quo. And so you go back to checking your emails. You go back to just writing down your to-do list and then working on things without really a methodical process. The reason I wanted to bring up this slide is this is one of those things that helps you remind yourself on why you need to use Matrix, because you'll start feeling like you're losing control of your time and your resources. And so when you go back to Matrix, you realize, okay, I'm going to center myself, and this is how I will determine what I need to do now, what I need to do later, what I need to delegate. And that's pretty much the reason why you came to Matrix in the first place. So keep this in the back of your mind. Whenever you lose focus, whenever you lose a sense of why is it that you need to use the software, think about this slide. So let's talk about the fundamentals behind Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Now, what I really like about this quote is it helps us understand that there's not one dimension. There's not just one thing that you look at when you determine what you need to work on, but instead you're looking at the two dimensions of importance and urgency, right? So let me ask you a simple exercise. Take out a piece of paper and start writing down the things you have to do. So right after this call, start doing that. Imagine you have 10 or 15 things on your plate. My next question for you is, what do you work on first? Do you start at the top of the list because you wrote that down first? Or do you start at the bottom of the list because you wrote that down last, right? And then if you have to add something to the list, where do you add it? At the top or the bottom of the list? And this is the challenge that all of us face, which is when you have a to-do list, there is no sense of purpose, no sense of no reason why you have to work on one thing or another. So instead of having a to-do list, what you have is a to-do matrix. So you take each of those 15 tasks or whatever, and then you put it into 4 distinct buckets, the dimensions of important and urgency. What are the things that are important and urgent? What are the things that are important and not urgent? What are the things that is urgent but not important? And then what's everything else? Why do you even work on anything that's not important and not urgent, right? So what happens instead is you have what's called the Eisenhower Matrix. It's a simple but powerful time management framework. And by categorizing all the things you have to do into these various buckets, it makes it so much easier for you to focus on what it is you need to work on. So one of the things I like to do when I start my day is I always look at my matrix and see, okay, where should I focus my time? Where can I spend my efforts? And what happens is I remind myself my goals and what it is. And so instead of having that to-do list, you have these 4 quadrants. And what happens is it helps you prioritize your task and make the most out of your time. So how it works inside Protomatrix is to actually take those action items that I mentioned and put it into these 4 buckets. The important and urgent are the things you should do now. The important but not urgent are things you should plan for. And so when you do an exercise, this very, very simple exercise, it forces you to prioritize. It forces you to think about your priorities. So here's the next part. Do your matrix and then ask all your coworkers to do the exact same thing and then walk around the office and start comparing notes. And what happens is that you will start finding discrepancies that you didn't know were there. Imagine being able to see your manager's priority list and then being able to see your coworkers' priority list and being able to see your direct reports priority list. That's where the magic happens. Being able to compare notes and say, wait a minute, I didn't realize that you thought that, this was high priority or this was low priority, or, realizing that you're working on the wrong things. So the 4-quadrant Eisenhower matrix creates alignment across your team because it forces you to prioritize from the very beginning. So in my opinion, half the battle, half the work is deciding what it is you need to work on. And so when you do this particular exercise, if you use almost nothing else in per matrix and all you do is just bucketize your task into the quadrants, I think you'll find a lot more clarity in your work. And that's a good start. So success from using Protomatrix isn't always about finding out what everyone agrees on. That's the obvious stuff, right? But it's about discovering disagreement on what should be a priority when it isn't. And if you find that, once a month or whatever, when you have these team meetings and you discover that there's a misalignment in priorities across your team, then you know that Protomatrix has added a ton of value. A couple of key tips, and then we'll jump into the demo. One, if everything's important and urgent, then nothing is important and urgent. And that's a key takeaway, because if you do that exercise I mentioned and you took those 15 things and you categorize them into buckets, and then quadrant 1 has all 15 items, then you've done nothing in terms of the problems that you have, right? And so in my opinion, you should never have more than 25% of your task in important and urgent. Be very, very critical on yourself, and ensure that, the things in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 are actually things that actually truly matter. Then use Protomatrix to sync up on goals with team members. One of the things I like to do is, if you have your personal priority list, ask everyone else that you work with to have their priority list. And again, when I say priority list here, I do mean a priority matrix. So it's not just a list, but it's about a matrix where you do categorize these by importance and urgency. And then when you have your team meetings, just start comparing notes, and you either project your matrix on the screen or your coworkers matrix on the screen. And then if you use a team, if you're using Protomatrix with a team, have a project called team priorities, and then project that on the screen during your team meeting. So if you have a staff meeting on a weekly basis, it is so powerful and so useful just to have everyone be on the same page. One of the things I always ask people to do is regularly reassess and adjust your strategies. Protomatrix, at the end of the day, is just a piece of software. And all of you have probably seen so many pieces of software. You've probably started more software than you can count, right? I mean, on your hands. So what happens is that we get really excited about software, but we don't focus enough on adjusting our strategies and actually focusing on just using the software to tackle the problems that we have. And so when you use Protomatrix, make sure that you reassess constantly on how to best use Protomatrix and ensure that you're actually focusing on the key results. One of the things I've I've seen customers struggle with is that, again, you get started with Matrix real strong, but then you start forgetting, and then you start going back to your old ways. So if you have trouble checking Matrix on a constant basis, either being weekly or daily, then make sure that you do everything to bring Matrix to the front and center, which is install our desktop apps or turn on notifications, install our apps inside Teams and all that, with the sole purpose of it being there to remind you what you need to work on. So these are key tips that I think are actually very, very useful to maximize your success. And I hope that you leverage this. My goal in all of this, more important than you using Matrix software itself, is that you come out of this webinar really thinking about your priorities and how you're managing them. And then hopefully you become a little bit more effective at prioritizing your task. With that, I do want to remind you one more time that the webinars are posted on affluence.com/webinars, and we cover a lot of other topics as well. And then if you have any questions, reach out to helpdesk@affluence.com. And then let's jump into the product and show you how to actually put this into practice. So here I have my Matrix open. So as you can see, this is the web application. If you go to affluence.com, click on web app, then you'll be able to access our application. And as you can see, front and center in Matrix is the 4 quadrants that I mentioned: the do now, the do later, the delegate, and the inbox. So instead of having that to-do list, right, that you typically see in your task management software, we force you to prioritize within these 4 quadrants. And now let me give you a sense of the structure of Matrix. On the left-hand side are what's called projects. So you can think of projects as different matrices. So for example, for me, I have a personal priority project. I'm a team priority project. I have a goal for 2024. And then below that, you might have other types of projects for different initiatives that you have. The whole idea, though, is that everything has a 4 quadrants associated with it. So what that allows you to prioritize your personal task, then your team task, and then your goals for the year, or a particular initiative that you're taking charge. So such as improving your operational efficiency, or building a new website, or growing your team, etc. So I have the personal priority project selected. And so when I select a project, I have the 4 quadrants. And then on the right-hand side, here's the details around the project itself. So for example, I can invite team members to the project, or I can customize the name of the quadrants or the colors of the quadrants. But let's just say I want to create a task. So I click on add item here. I'm going to say follow up with webinar participants. Okay. And so that's my task. But in Matrix, one of the things I can do is I can just type when it's due. So I would say due tomorrow, 2 p.m. And so when I click add here, what happens is Matrix uses natural language processing and takes that due tomorrow, 2 p.m., set the due date for me, and uses my local time to set the due date. Now, here's the thing. After you create this task in Matrix, on the right-hand side is what's called the item details. It has the information around the task itself and then a series of metadata. I want to highlight 2 things real quick. 1, due dates, and 2, reminders. These, in my opinion, are the two most important features when it comes to using Matrix on a personal level. The reason is the following. When you create a task, right, and you don't set a due date, and maybe that task is important, then how do you know whether or not it's urgent or not? So you're not able to properly categorize things by importance and urgency if you don't have a good sense of time. So in my opinion, every important task that you have should have a due date for precisely that reason. It puts something tangible on your calendar. One of the challenges all of us face is limited time to work on the things we need to work on. So you've probably heard about time boxing, where you go and you dedicate specific hours of your day to work on something that's important. Well, if we don't set a due date and we don't set reminders for ourselves, we will start forgetting, and the most important tasks that we have will start falling to the back burner, and we keep on working on things that are urgent. So when you use Matrix, I strongly recommend setting due dates for everything that's important. And then secondly, you can set what's called reminders. Now, the difference between due dates and reminders is very subtle, but very important. Let's just say if you're working on a very, very important project, and that project is due in 3 weeks, but that project will take you 3 days to get done, right? Just the amount of work that is involved. So if you set the due date for 3 weeks from now, and then the due date comes and you realize, wait a minute, there's no way I can get this done on this day. Then you realize, okay, you know what? I needed to actually remind myself prior to that. So the way it works with reminders is reminders will send you notifications to say, hey, this is start working on this, make sure that you actually, this is front burner, move this to your front burner so you can actually start working on those critical tasks. So one of the things I like to do is when I set a due date here, I will go and I'll say, remind me daily. So now on a daily basis, Matrix will send me a reminder to ensure that I work on this task. So when I follow up with a customer, for example, I tend to do in 1 month and then remind me monthly. So what happens is that when the month comes and the due date comes, if I forget to do it on another month, the Matrix will send me another reminder. This is a way to trick your brain. Let me explain. When you start your day, this morning, for example, what did you do? You probably checked your emails, right? And so if you check your emails, guess what? You're looking at the last email in because that's at the top of the list. And so you look at that email and you decide whether or not you want to respond to it. But the reality is your most important emails likely is not that last email. And so we are constantly pulled away from our most important work by the things that are urgent. So the way to trick our brain is to actually ensure that your most important tasks are always triggered and that it's coming back on a daily basis or weekly basis or whatever, so it becomes top of mind. This is something that I do all the time. I always set these recurring reminders, so then those recurring reminders will ensure that I'm thinking about the task in the back of my brain. And so, I'm just even looking at Matrix, looking at all my alerts and notifications. I see things that may be overdue or coming up soon and ensure that I work on it. So I highly recommend that. So again, if you are using Matrix on a personal basis, I recommend these two features. If you use nothing else, aside from putting the task into the appropriate quadrants and all that, I think you'll find that this to be the most effective way to ensure you work on the right task. Now, one thing I do want to mention too is that you might not want to write, every little thing in Party Matrix. I think that just can overwhelm you real fast. So when you create a task in Party Matrix, focus on tasks that you can have control over, where you can make a choice and a decision, right? So that's the most basic level, is that if you're prioritizing, then you only should prioritize things that you can prioritize. For example, you're gonna grab lunch or do eat dinner or do all those things. Those are things you always have to do. Therefore, there's no sense in terms of prioritizing them. Okay, so now on the right-hand side, let me show you some of the other features and item details. You can star a task. What starring does is it actually puts the task at the top of the list. So for me personally, I star maybe 3 to 5 tasks in a particular project. And then overall, I'm able to see all my star tasks. And then below that, I have the ability to add an icon. I've seen customers make good use of red, yellow, and green just as a way to visualize that, this is on schedule or behind schedule. And down below, you have the option to delegate to somebody else. So the way it works in Matrix is you might have a personal project, but you might have a team project where you have multiple people responsible for various tasks. So if you click on the owner, you can actually change owner to another coworker. So let's just say if I need to assign this to another person, I just click assign. Now somebody else who's responsible for it, their avatar takes over the task, and so it makes it a very visual way to see the priorities. And then you have progress, efforts, reminder, due dates, as I mentioned. And then below that, you have something called the chat. And what I like about the chat is it's a way to have a record of all the changes that happens within the task. So as you can see, I was able to interact with the chat. For example, I type, remind me daily. I can go in here and type other commands such as, assign to a coworker, or I can say due in 3 weeks or something like that. And again, our natural language takes over and processes those time for you. In the notes section, that's where you can add additional information around the task itself. For example, maybe I want to give some details around this particular follow-up, or I can actually create subtasks. One of the neat things that we have in Matrix is this thing called Fill with AI. So let me show you what happens. When I click Fill with AI, what happens is our AI system will actually go and take a particular task and start filling out some of the details for you. So I'll show you in another example on how to use that fill with AI to create your subtasks that might be relevant. And then lastly, you have the resources section, which is where you can add files, links, as well as emails that might be relevant to any specific task. So let me jump to a different project now. Let's just say if I want to go to another team project, so you see how I open my team priorities, and when I do that, I have the ability to, you can see how the color actually have changed, and also I use different quadrant names. So when you select a project, on the right-hand side, there's a project details, and this is where you can change the project information. You can also star a project, which pushes to the top of the list, and then you can invite team members to specific projects. So if you were using Matrix in your team, if you're a manager and you have 3 or 4 direct reports, you can go and create a team priority project, invite 3 or 4 team members here, and now everyone can access Matrix and see exactly what everyone's priorities are. One of the things I want to emphasize is that make sure that you assign people the appropriate task. So then it becomes very visual. When you open up Matrix and you're projecting this on the big screen, you can see what everyone's priorities are. What are the things that are in Q1, Q2, and then what are the things that's in the back burner, right? And so when you're having that discussion, it is so easy to pinpoint the discrepancy because, your coworker might look at it and say, wait a minute, I thought we were going to work on this particular task. Or somebody else may say, hey, why are we working on this? This shouldn't even be a priority. So think of Matrix as a communication tool that helps everyone be on the same page. Similarly, you might have a project that helps you communicate your priorities to your clients or to your manager. So to show them, hey, these are the things we consider priorities, make sure we're on the same page. So imagine being able to understand exactly what your clients consider to be top priorities. That just creates a much more seamless experience when it comes to communicating. And if you want to change the name of the quadrants, you can go down here and do that. You can click on each of these quadrant names and change the quadrant. So let me give you an example why you might want to do that. In some scenarios, instead of using the Eisenhower Matrix, you might want to use Matrix to map a different kind of process. So there's many particular approaches when it comes to 4-quadrant methodology that includes things like, instead of using the dimensions of importance and urgency, you might want to use the dimensions of impact and effort, right? What are the tasks with the most impact and the least effort? Well, guess what? If you are trying to prioritize your work, those kind of dimensions might be very useful. So here with Matrix, we've created dozens of templates for you. And from those templates, you can actually just use them because it's just a way to recategorizing all the quadrant names and so forth. And it just helps you communicate your tasks and your priorities much more efficiently. Now, when you use Matrix and you start building up your own methodology and your own approaches that's specific to your organization, you can go to the top right here and then you can save that as a template. This is really neat. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if you're in HR, and if you're in HR and you have a particular process for onboarding your employees, well, you can create a Matrix project, create maybe the 10 or 15 tasks that you have that every employee, new employee should follow. Then afterwards, you go in and save that project as template. Now, when you have a new employee, instead of actually creating a blank project from scratch, you can actually create a project from that template, and all the tasks will get created, and then all the due dates will automatically get propagated for you. It's a fantastic way to save save time and effort on repetitive tasks, and you're able to actually build processes around Matrix itself. Okay, so now let me show you how to create a project, because you saw how I can have different types of projects. To create a project, you simply click on project here, create project. And when you go create a project, you have several options. The first is you can always create a blank project, right? And so here you you type in the project name that you desire, and then you can actually choose the different templates that we have. So I have, whatever, 7 templates here that I can choose from. Basic Matrix means Eisenhower Matrix, but you can see how I can choose a couple of other methodology, and then I can choose a color coding. So very, very basic, very simple. But I can also choose from what's called public templates. Now, if I click on public templates, these are other templates that we have that we share with you that you can use at no cost. You simply choose one of these other templates that we have, and it actually fills in additional information that's relevant to your particular needs. And then if you save those templates, like I mentioned, where you can have your HR templates or your employee onboarding templates or your client onboarding templates, you can click on My Templates and then choose one of these templates instead. And then lastly, you're able to use what's called Create with AI. So this is actually one of the features that we have that's relatively new, but what it allows you to do is for you to type in your goal and our system will build out the task for you. So imagine if your goal this year is to, get a promotion, you can type this into your goal creation your AI here, and then click next. And what happens is Matrix will generate all the tasks, help you prioritize it, set the due dates for you in order for you to meet your goal. So after this webinar, I recommend that you try it out. If you have, some particular initiative that's in on your mind right now that you wish there was a way to uh, sort of streamline or improve or actually tackle, try this, and then Party Matrix will show you the task, and then you can use it as a starting point. It's not going to be perfect. It's not intended to be perfect, but it's a really good starting point. So that's how you create projects. And so the way it works in Party Matrix is that you can actually have a lot of projects. And so in my main work account, my real work account, I have something like 300 projects, and that's okay because I just have different initiatives I'm working on. There's different types of projects that our company has that covers everything from different applications to customer service to goals and so forth. So when you use Protomatrix, it's perfectly normal for you to have 5, 10, 15 projects. In my recommendation, I think you should have at least 4 projects to start. You should have a personal priority project. You should have a team priority project that you share with your coworkers. You should have a goals for 2024, or whatever it is. You could do goal for this quarter. And the reason I have that particular project is because Party Matrix is very good at reminding you what you need to work on. And so for me, I have so many things on my plate that I need a constant reminder to make sure that I'm working on the right thing. So I have a goals for 2024, and within it, I will have my short-term goals, my long-term goals, and I would write it down and I'll set recurring reminders. And you saw how to do that, right? So you set those recurring reminders. So on a weekly, monthly basis, you're reminded of your goal that you set from the very beginning. That's one of those reasons where so many of us fail to meet our goals is that we are very gung-ho about it from the very beginning. We'll go and we'll say, hey, we're going to do all these things, but then it doesn't become top of mind because there's 1,000 things that's going on at any point in time, right? Just 2 weeks after you set your goals, there's already 1,000 new emails, 3 new initiatives, and so many meetings you've had in between. So therefore, you're going to completely forget what it is you wanted to do in the very first place. So for me, setting the goals, creating those recurring reminders is a way to ensure that what I want to do is top of my mind. And then the last project that I think you should have is something around a particular initiative that you care about. So if you're a new manager, then maybe you might have an initiative on improving or meeting whatever your goals for the first 90 days or something like that. Or if you're a director of operations, you might want to be streamlining your process. So have something that again is top of mind for you that you're working on a constant basis. So I would definitely have at least 4 of those projects. But as you can see, once you really get accustomed to Prey Matrix, you can have a lot of other projects. Just think how every project has a 4 quadrants associated with it, and that allows you to understand what your priorities are for everything there. Now, let me switch gear a little bit and talk about email management. So Party Matrix, a lot of customers come to Party Matrix to use our email management software. And the reason people do that is because that's where we tend to all struggle the most. I get a few hundred emails per day. Sometimes it's just so hard to actually stay on top of it. Let me ask you a question. Like, let's say you get a really important email. How do you mark it as important? You can flag it. That usually works. You can set a reminder. That sometimes works. The problem is if you have 5 flag emails, that's easy. You have 50 flag emails, then now what do you do? And so for me, if I flag my emails, it works for a little bit, but if I'm responding to that email on the same day, then that's fine. But if I need to respond to that email in 3 weeks, it's virtually impossible because it will get lost within the entire email chains. All the other emails will come in and take over. So with Matrix, we have an Outlook extension that lets you prioritize your emails. So I'll show you how it works. Let's just say I have a particular email that I get right here. If you go to the apps here inside Outlook, you can install Matrix Turn Email into Tasks, which is an extension that is part of your Matrix. And so if you need to install that, you simply click Add Apps and then search for Matrix. And what happens is I can click on Matrix here and I can choose Prioritize Email. So Party Matrix allows me to take any email that I get in Outlook and be able to capture that email and turn it into a task. I can actually change the item name here. So let's just say if a customer sent me an email and I need to prioritize the email, I can type in, whatever information is relevant. I can choose what project it goes in, and I can choose what quadrant it goes in. So this is a way to ensure that I'm not going to forget the email and that I prioritize it in the right place. But here's another powerful use of this particular extension, which is the ability to assign it to another person. So let's just say if you get an email and you need to assign to a coworker, instead of just forwarding that email to somebody, and then again, if you forward an email, there's no accountability, right? You can't set due dates. You can't set priority level. You can't organize it into a project. You can't set reminders. So just think about how all you're doing when you forward an email is you're passing the puck to the next person without adding accountability. So instead, with Matrix, you're able to prioritize the email, put in the appropriate quadrants, assign to the person, set a due date, right? And so, for example, I'll set a due date here, and I go ahead and click Capture Email. Now, when I've done that, it opens the item details, just like what you saw in our web application. And down here, I can go and I can type in the comments as needed. I can go to notes, or I can actually set those reminders, right? So I can say, remind everyone daily. And so now what I've just done is I've set a recurring reminder to ensure that everyone who's on this particular task will get notification and respond to this customer. I think the way where Matrix for Outlook shines the most is for responding to emails, for reminding you to respond to emails that you can't respond to today, but that you need to respond to in the future. So, for me, again, sometimes I have to follow up with an email in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. If I just leave the emails as flagged, it's just not going to work. And so I would set these recurring due dates and recurring reminders so I can open up that email again and actually get to it. The neat thing is, in the resources section, that email is uploaded for me as well. So my coworker can open this item, click on this email file, open the email file, and respond to the email file as needed. One of the things that makes Matrix for Outlook extremely unique, and I'm not aware of any other application that does this, is the ability to attach email to existing tasks. So instead of actually just going in and creating new tasks from email, imagine if you got a follow-up from the customer, and now you might have a task already in place, and within that task you have your PowerPoint, you have your presentation or documents or other resources. Well, check this out. You can open a Matrix, click on Open Matrix instead of Prioritize Email. And what you can do is you can take this email and then search for the appropriate task and then click on this Attach. So what it does, it adds this email as a resource to an existing task. And it is very, very useful if you have a conversation with a customer or multiple email chains that's relevant to a particular task and be able to tie it all together in one central place. This is a very unique feature in Matrix. I'm not aware of anybody else that has this. So if you have a lot of emails and you struggle with a lot of email management and you're trying to, pass emails back and forth within your team, this is the application to use. One of the things that's really nice too about Matrix inside Outlook is the ability for you to add Matrix here on the left-hand side. So if you are always in Outlook, make sure you click on this button down here and add Matrix again. And once you do, you can pin Matrix on the left-hand side here. And check this out. If I click on Matrix, I can open the entire application directly inside Outlook. So we're a universal app for the Microsoft ecosystem. So what that means is you can access Matrix no matter where you are within the Microsoft Office suite and be able to access all your tasks, be able to access all your priorities without having to leave the application. So now if I jump to Microsoft Teams, check this out. I have the exact same thing too. So inside Microsoft Teams, I have my entire application. So I have Matrix installed here in Teams. Again, if you need to, you can go to Apps, search for Matrix, then you right click and pin Matrix in Teams. You might have to ask your IT to approve the application for your organization, but it's a very straightforward process. And once you do, you can see that you can access Matrix within Teams, within Outlook, and never having to leave any of those applications. So one of the challenges I see customer face all the time is that, there's just too much context switching, right? There's just too many applications that you're using at any point in time. So that's why I recommend you do install Matrix everywhere. And so then no matter what it is that you're doing, you can access all your different tasks. There's a couple of neat features inside Teams that makes Matrix unique. So if you go to the chat here, you can install what's called the one-on-one view. What the one-on-one view does is it lets you add the one-on-one to coworkers that you work with. As an example, let's just say you have 3 or 4 direct reports. You can go and add the one-on-one view for every direct report that you work with in the chat here in Teams. And when you open that view, that tab, you can actually see all the tasks you have in common with them across your entire Matrix. It is so useful because when you have those meetings, you can actually just hone in on exactly the issues at hand, no matter what project these tasks are located in. So instead of having to open Matrix, go to the different projects and finding the tasks you have in common, this single view creates what I call the people-centric view, right? It flips all your data around and finds data you have, find tasks you have in common with coworkers. So this could be your direct reports, but this could also be your manager. This could be another colleague that you work with across multiple projects at the same time. And what's nice about this too is you're able to create shared tasks directly from this conversation, allowing you to create a task assigned to the other person without even having to go to Matrix. And so you can see how I can say, call Sue tomorrow, again, 2 p.m. What this does is create the task, assign to the person, invite you as a follower so you get updates, create the task, set the due dates, and then you can just choose what project it goes in. So that's as simple as that. So this saves you so much time and effort as you use Matrix more and more. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Matrix and show you a few final features, and then we'll wrap it up. Now, when I open Matrix again here inside the Teams app, it looks just like the web app. You don't need the Teams app to use our application. We also have desktop app for Mac and Windows, so the interface is very similar no matter what platform you're on. But one of the things you'll notice is there's something called the home view. If you click on this home view, this is where all those notifications come in. So I mentioned about how you can set the due dates and reminders and so forth and all these ways to trick your brain. Well, you have to start your day in the home view. So for me personally, I always start my day in the home view, and in the alert section, these are all the tasks that are relevant to me. That means either a task that I've been assigned, a task that I assigned to somebody else that's been updated, or a task that assigned to me, but the due date trigger or the reminder trigger, right? And so being able to go here and see everything helps me focus on what are the things that I need to respond to. And then my goal is to get to an alert of 0, right? Which means you've looked at everything that's important. But sometimes, you're not able to go through all that, and you're able to click on here and clear all notifications. This is where those recurring reminders are magical. So I actually get a lot of alerts, and honestly, I'm not able to go through all of them. So what I do is once in a while, I actually clear all my notifications. Then the most important task will pop back up again because I set those recurring reminders. And so for my advice to you is make sure you set those recurring reminders on everything that is truly important, like again, your goals or a critical follow-up. So then Matrix will bring that back up, surface that back up to you. And so then, you might have a bunch of urgent tasks that are not truly important, and they'll go away. They won't come back again, but your most important ones will. So that's how the alert section work. There's a lot of other views inside Matrix that's quite useful depending on your different use cases. So if you go to a project, one of the things you can do is you can actually switch views to the list view. You can go to the calendar view, the Gantt chart view, and also the reports view. So depending on your specific needs, you might be able to leverage some of the other views we have in Matrix. If you're a project manager, you might want to go and look at the Gantt chart, and we have Gantt chart on a per project basis, but we also have Gantt chart across all your projects, right? So Priority Matrix provide you all sorts of visibility at a local level, which is in a per project, but also a global level across all your projects. And so if you ever need to find any specific information, go to the search view and click on filters here, and you're able to create custom filters that allows you to access everything that's important, no matter what project it's in. Okay, let's recap real quick on what it is that you should do today. One, you should create at least these 4 projects that I mentioned. 2, when you create a project and you create tasks, make sure that you set those due dates and those reminders. Try our AI for creating your goals, a project from your goals, and then try our AI for filling with AI where you have a specific task and you need to create subtasks. Those are the basic features that you can try today. And I think that if you just share a team project with your coworkers, use that in your meetings and project it on the screen, you'll find that your communication is going to be so much more effective. I'm going to jump back to my presentation here. So now it's really up to you. Make sure that you install Matrix, and if you use Teams and Outlook, I think it's a no-brainer to install it on those applications. Otherwise, you can install Matrix on your desktop app as well. Create those projects that I mentioned, and then invite team members and pitch them to them why it's important to focus on high-impact tasks. Again, I think that the most important reason why you want to use Matrix compared to any other application is the emphasis on prioritization. Ensure that everyone is communicating what's on their mind, what's important, what's urgent, and be sure that everyone's on the same page. If that's what you use Matrix for, you'll find a ton of value there. When you create the task in Matrix, set those due dates and don't drop them. Come back to Matrix and mark them as done whenever you're done with those tasks. And then finally, ruthlessly prioritize. If you find that you're not in control of your time and you're using Matrix, but you're not more effective at prioritizing, then reassess your strategy and reach out to us if you need help. Some advice: use Matrix to track high impact tasks. As I mentioned, you don't have to use Matrix to write down your most basic list or whatever. You can, but make sure that your high impact tasks are tracked. And then think of Matrix as a communication tool. I think sometimes, people get in the weeds with respect to tracking their to-dos and so forth, but instead just think of Matrix as a way to ensure that everyone is aligned and be on the same page. And if you use it for that purpose, and be able to identify discrepancies in your priorities, you'll find a ton of value. And then lastly, make sure you use Matrix to manage your personal goals. As you saw how I had a project for goals of 2024, I find that to be so invaluable because I need a constant reminder to make sure that I focus on my most critical task. So what success should look like with Matrix? On a personal level, you should be checking Matrix at least on a weekly basis, if not daily, to remind yourself of your goals. And then you're tracking all your priorities. And at the team level, everyone's on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. So if any team member ever has the question, hey, what is it that we need to work on today? Or, are we working on the right things? They should be able to go into the team Priority Matrix project and be able to get all those answers that to those questions I just asked. And then lastly, if you use a lot of emails, you have a lot of emails that are important, but you're finding that you're dropping them or you're not working on the emails in a timely manner, use our Outlook extension to prioritize those emails, assign them to appropriate team members, and ensure that you don't drop them. And that's pretty much it. If there's any questions right now, please send them in the chat and I'd be happy to look at it and answer them. Thank you.